Thank you to all those who joined me today. I'm largely going to talk about immigration uh, because that truly is an existential threat to any society. But I'll also talk about a few other things that are pissing me off. Apparently, people are loving this series of things that are pissing me off. All right, let's start with immigration. I mean, this is something that I've been weighing in on for, decades. And there's a whole section in the parasitic mind which deals with this, and you can go on my uh, show on my YouTube channel. I've got a whole bunch of episodes on rational immigration policy, and what should be the optimal strategies that we use to develop a sane and optimal immigration strategy and so on. This has been, of course, on my mind for years. Oh, I see that my wife is there. Hi, wife. Give me a thumbs up. She's actually watching uh, our son's soccer match. I couldn't go. Maybe it's good that I don't go because some of the places where my son plays soccer, there are a lot of noble people of perpetual peace who may recognize me and may not be happy with the disease that I suffer from called being Jewish. But in any case, oh, I saw your thumbs up. I love you, beautiful wife. All right, so here we go. You ready? Why did it come to my mind today specifically? I mean, I always think about immigration because I see what's happening all over the West and Montreal, anywhere I go. But it's the Laken Riley case today, where some of you know this lovely young nursing student, I think, was hunted down by a Venezuelan gang member who stalked her and then tried to rape her and ended up killing her. He just got the life in prison without parole, but apparently the death penalty was not on the table because, we have to be kind and empathetic. We're a moral society. We don't believe in the barbarism of taking a life. No, you know what's barbaric? To take off the death penalty for all cases. It is perfectly evolutionarily rational for people to lose their lives if they commit certain heinous crimes. And certainly this one seemed to fit that. And certainly if you saw how cold and detached this guy was as all sorts of people were reading their impact statements, it really broke your heart. I mean, a real psychopath. So there are multiple elements to this suicidal empathy that I've been talking about, which of course many of you know I'm feverishly working on my forthcoming book of that title, Suicidal Empathy, and there'll be a whole chapter on this issue. But today I want to talk about the distinction between the irrationality of illegal immigration, but then also the irrationality of many forms of legal immigration. So both of these have problems, right? You can let in legally people that you should not be letting in those numbers. And then you could also turn a blind eye to millions of people who are coming into the country illegally. So let's first start with, it's always fun to link whatever you're talking about, or maybe not, the right word is not fun, but it's always powerful to infuse into any discussion that one is having on a topic with your own, personal reality with this issue. So, as some of you know, I'm currently a visiting professor and global ambassador at Northwood University in Michigan. Gorgeous university, gorgeous little town, Midland. And I'm not saying this only because I'm a global ambassador to the school. Uh, it really has been an incredible experience to be there. They give me all the freedom to do great stuff, as long as, of course, I'm contributing to the mission of the university, which I certainly am. But why am I saying this? Because when it came time for me to take this, I took a leave from my home university. It might eventually turn into a permanent position, we'll see. But for now, it's a 1 year leave. Now, I'm Canadian, yes. I've been a professor at UC Irvine for 2 years, a professor at Dartmouth College, a professor at my alma mater at Cornell University. Now I'm a professor at Northwood University. Uh, I'm a well-known professor, if you forgive the immodesty. Most of the people who are the border agents who were processing me on the border knew me, recognized me, and were fans. I've spent 31 years as a professor fighting for all of the foundational values that would constitute, American exceptionalism. And yet I had to come to Northwood University legally, right? I had to, you know what I had to do? I had to go down to my university office in downtown Montreal, take off my PhD from Cornell from the wall because they asked me to. I took my actual physical doctoral dissertation. By the way, all these things are all available online. I mean, you could literally go and see my doctoral dissertation in psychology of decision making. You can find it right now. You can go to my Wikipedia page and click on a link, and it will take you to the repository that has my PhD. But the law was that I had to find a border, like an entry point. In this case, the closest one was about an hour and 10-minute drive or something like that in Plattsburgh, New York. So I picked up my diploma. I picked up my doctoral dissertation, had a whole bunch of papers. Northwood University had to hire a immigration law firm to prepare all sorts of papers. And again, it's not as though I'm some unknown person. It's not that, I have a criminal record or it's unsure. It couldn't be any easier than for me to be going to the US. But yet I had to go through a legal process that cost me a day of my life. We had to go to Plattsburgh. We had to wait there for them to process me. Then we went through the whole process. Then, we hung out a bit in Plattsburgh and returned back to Montreal, but we had to do it. So think about it this way. Why is it that I have to go through that process, but 20 million people, that's one estimate, but it's probably more, can just say, I don't give a shit about your laws. It doesn't matter what the laws are. The first action that I will do is violate the most fundamental laws of the country, which is you can't enter it illegally. But then once I've been there long enough, well, listen, I'm integrated into your society. I pay taxes. My children are born here. Therefore, yeah, I know that I, raped your borders, but now I'm here. Now that chump, Saad, he has to go through the legal mechanisms because he's a professor. But if I'm an ISIS member, or if I'm an Islamic extremist, or I'm a El Salvadorian gang member, or a Venezuelan gang member, or not a gang member at all, I just don't want to go through the process while millions of chumps will spend 20 years in the process, so be it. This goes back to the idea of deontological versus consequentialist ethics. Let me repeat it again for those of you that are not familiar with it. Deontological ethics is a statement of absolutes. It is never okay to lie is a deontological statement. It is okay to lie to spare someone's feelings is a consequentialist statement. When it comes to certain principles, freedom of speech, freedom of inquiry, presumption of innocence, immigration laws, those are deontological principles. It's not, yes, it's a law, but it applies to that idiot Saad, but it doesn't apply to 20 million Guatemalans. They can get in because they're looking for a better life. Okay? You either have those laws or you don't. So there is no consequentialist ethos that justifies why a country should let in people illegally. So from a strict moral perspective, deontological perspective, ethical perspective, I would be perfectly fine for every single person who's entered the country illegally to be deported with zero hesitation. Okay? That's what a law is. That's why the law exists. Once you start doing, but if you steal, but it's less than $950, then we're not going to send out the cops. Well, then guess what people do? They steal $920, knowing full well that they won't be stopped, right? So you either have laws and hence a civic society, or you don't. Once you allow the penetration, I mean literally the rape of your borders, then all bets are off. Now, let's talk about, and this, by the way, is all going in Suicidal Empathy, so you're getting a little preview. A lot of the imbeciles who say, but the reason why I would never support the death penalty, even if we find the DNA of a recidivist pedophile in the rectum of 10 dead children, you never know. Maybe he's innocent. It is better to let go 100 guilty people in order to save the possibility of one innocent man ever being put to death. Okay, let's go with that. Let's now apply, this is called analogical reasoning, okay, for the slow people in the back. And the reason why you hear me speaking in a spicy manner is because I'm pissed. Because I'm pissed for that young woman who no longer exists, called Laken Riley, right? So if it's okay to let go 1 million guilty people in order to spare the possibility that one innocent man might be, falsely put to death, doesn't the same apply for we should make sure to never allow any illegal immigrants, even though most of them are not going to be rapists, because we want to protect the likelihood of a single person being killed or raped? Because now the argument that the progressive degenerates give, well, come on, if you have 20 million people that are here illegally, but only 1% are committing such, heinous crimes, that means 99% are not. Well, what constitutes a okay number? So 1% that did end up raping your little girl or killed your daughter, that would be okay? What's the okay number? Well, here's an idea. 0 is the okay number. Not a single illegal immigrant is allowed to be in a sovereign nation. I had to go and pick up. How about the indignity of, literally the border agents were talking to me about, oh, yeah, I know, suicidal empathy. So they knew who I was. They were fans. Yet I had to go down to my office and play the game of showing them physically my doctoral dissertation, my doctoral diploma. But Jose Rodriguez doesn't have to, because he's a poor Venezuelan. But the guy who came from the Lebanese Civil War, who ran really fast from execution, well, he has to go through the proper channels. So the law applies to some people, not others. Now, maybe if I had a darker tan that day, because I can get really, really dark. So if I had a darker tan, maybe then I could really be like a refugee of color, and then they wouldn't have asked for to see my doctoral dissertation or doctoral diploma. Okay, so there is no argument that, but most illegal immigrants are actually nice people. It doesn't matter. Nobody gives a shit. You're here illegally. You don't get to come in illegally while I have to waste endless days going through a process. There are people who've been waiting for a green card legally in the United States for 20 years. What gives the right of someone else to cut through the line and say, what a chump? That's what happens in other societies that don't have law and order. I come from those societies. Let me tell you a quick story. And this, again, will probably be in my forthcoming book in Suicidal Empathy. When my parents and we all moved to Canada from Lebanon, my father was getting several parking tickets. He was parking in different places and getting parking tickets. And he was getting pissed. And so he said, to someone, he said, well, who is the person, who's the policeman that I have to speak to so that I can get rid of this problem? Of course, the implication is, who's the policeman that I have to grease? Who's the policeman that I have to give bakshish to so that the problem goes away? And then the person whom he was asking said, well, that's not how it works over here. To which my father answered, what kind of barbaric society is this? It sounds funny, but from my father's perspective, from a Middle Eastern perspective, what kind of society is it where you can't solve problems through your networks and by greasing the police officers so that you can get rid of the problem? Because he comes from the Middle East, where that's how things are done. Who you know and what kind of bakshish you give determines how you navigate through society. Well, that wasn't the case in the West, but now it is like that in the West. And the people who are coming in come with that baggage. So you take a society where there is great collective trust, where there is great civic trust, legal trust, and you erode it by saying, hey, 20 million of you can get in. So that makes no sense. So that's legal coming in, through illegal immigration. Now let's talk about legal immigration. Canada, as you know, all over the West. Sweden, France, Spain, Italy, Denmark, all over the place. Portugal, and of course Canada have completely gone suicidally empathetic in their policies because they've greatly increased the entry of people into their societies. So first, from a economic and social perspective, it's very hard to assimilate such a large number of people. I'm talking assimilate in an infrastructure sense, right? It's hard to assimilate so many people. But it becomes much worse when the people that you are letting in are profoundly dangerous to the foundational values of the host societies. Now, that doesn't take fancy Professor Dr. Saad to tell you this. Anybody with a half a brain should be able to understand that in the same way that if you have two roommates who live together, one of whom is very, very messy, the other one is very orderly, and they're trying to live together, in that dynamic, in that dyadic interaction, it's always going to be the orderly one who loses, right? Because they like things to be perfectly neat, and the other one absolutely doesn't care about that. So there are all sorts of situations where oil, right, and fire don't mix well together, right? So societies that have 95 to 99% of polled people telling you that they have endemic Jew hatred in their minds and in their hearts are probably people who are going to bring baggage with them that's going to make it a lot more dangerous for Jews in the host society. That doesn't take fancy Professor Saad to tell you that. It just takes you having a brain. So when I've been saying for 20 plus years, Canada is going to regret what it's doing. People ignored it. Don't ignore my warnings. People ignored it. And now people write to me, we should have listened to you, Professor Saad. My God, you're such an oracle. No, I'm not an oracle. It's called a 3-day-old pigeon could have put that together for you. But you refuse to see it because, it's racist to think that. It's bigoted. It's Islamophobic. Let me read you a little. This is from the Parasitic Mind. You ready? This is from page 126 and 127. The section is titled Open Borders, Diversity is Our Strength. Okay, this is from the Parasitic Mind, page 126, 127, 128. So bear with me and please listen to every word because it's only gotten worse. But now suddenly Justin Trudeau recently came out and said, I think we got some things wrong and we're going to try to, slow down immigration. What a jackass. What a parasitic jackass. Anyways, let's go on. So here, I'm reading from my 2020 book, Parasitic Mind. Of all the platitudinous slogans uttered by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he is undoubtedly best known for repeatedly invoking the mantra, diversity is our strength. He appears to believe that any problem is solved by simply repeating his slogan enough times that the problem disappears. Increasing diversity is the solution to all challenges, be they economic, social, political, environmental, or related to security. Simply double down on the cultural, ethnic, and religious diversity of the massive influx of immigrants into Canada and watch as we all eventually hold hands in brotherly unison while singing John Lennon's Imagine. This is the type of ostrich logic that is destroying the future of the West. There are many forms of cultural enrichment, including restaurants of varied cuisines that come from living in a heterogeneous and pluralistic society. But the cultural and religious values that some immigrants bring with them to the West manifestly do not add to our strength. They only sow hatred, intolerance, and divisiveness. My good friend, Professor Salim Mansour, testified eloquently on this in front of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration in the Canadian House of Commons on October 1st, 2012. So now I'm about to read you verbatim his testimony. So please listen to every word. And by the way, his name is Salim Mansour, if you haven't put that together. Okay? He's a professor. So I'm reading his words now. The flow of immigration into Canada from around the world, and in particular the flow from Muslim countries, means a pouring in of numbers into a liberal society of people from cultures at best non-liberal. But we know through our studies and observation that the illiberal mix of cultures poses one of the greatest dilemmas and an unprecedented challenge to liberal societies such as ours, when there is no demand placed on immigrants any longer to assimilate into the founding liberal values of the country to which they have immigrated. Instead, a misguided and thoroughly wrong-headed policy of multiculturalism encourages the opposite. We may want to continue with a level of immigration into Canada annually that is about the same as it is at present. We cannot, however, continue with such an inflow of immigrants under the present arrangement of the official policy of multiculturalism based on the premise that all cultures are equal, when this is untrue. This policy is a severe, perhaps even a lethal test for a liberal democracy such as ours. We should not allow bureaucratic inertia to determine not only the policy, but the existing level of immigration numbers and source origin that Canada brings in annually. We have the precedent of how we selectively closed immigration from the Soviet bloc countries during the Cold War years, and we need to consider doing the same in terms of immigration from Muslim countries for a period of time, given how disruptive is the cultural baggage of illiberal values that is brought in as a result. We are, in other words, stoking the fuel of much unrest in our country, as we have witnessed of late in Europe. Lest any member wants to instruct me that my views are in any way politically incorrect or worse, I would like members to note that I come before you as a practicing Muslim who knows out of experience from the inside how volatile, how disruptive, how violent, how misogynistic is the culture of Islam today and has been during my lifetime, and how it greatly threatens our liberal democracy that I cherish, since I know what is its opposite. I'll end it there. So let me remind you, this is Professor Salim Mansour, a Muslim, who said this in front of the Canadian Senate in 2012. 12 years later, we have increased that immigration manyfold over. That's what suicidal empathy is. That's what ostrich parasitic syndrome is. Does that mean that every single Muslim is a bad guy? Of course not. Does it mean that if Islam gets past a certain percentage of a population, we can exactly predict what happens? Absolutely. Read the book by Peter Hammond, where he breaks down historically what happens to a society as a percentage of Muslim immigration in that society. By the way, there's a field called evolutionary game theory that models what happens to a society when you have different percentages of people who follow different strategies. So there's the classic evolutionary game theoretic model involving hawks and doves. You could look it up. John Maynard Smith is one of the guys who pioneered how you apply evolutionary game theory. And the idea is that depending on the strategies that are pursued by different people, depending on how quickly those population dynamics change, depending on the original number of people that constitutes members in each of those camps, you can create a simulation of how the population will longitudinally shift. So you could apply the principles of evolutionary game theory to say, hey, what happens if you allow entry in the millions of people to your society that don't share your foundational values? The answer is very, very clear. It's as clear as if a endocrinologist were to tell you, here is what happens if you contract diabetes. Here's step 1 of what's going to happen. Here's step 2. Here's step 7 of what's going to happen. We know this because the trajectory of diabetes has been sufficiently studied that we can exactly say what's going to happen when. So illegal immigration is a no-brainer. It should never be tolerated. For a million reasons, but the most fundamental of which is that it is a deontological violation. You can't be pregnant and a virgin unless it's an immaculate conception. You're either pregnant or you're a virgin. If you're pregnant, then you can't be a virgin. By the same token, you can't be a country of laws and you actually have sovereign borders, but 20 million people have made a mockery of those borders. That means you're not a sovereign nation. You're not a country of laws. You do have a two-tier system because Gad Saad had to go through Plattsburgh and wait in line for hours. And he's Gad Saad. Everybody knew me there. But I still had to go. You know why? Because I'm a law-abiding person. I cherish the United States. My university in Michigan didn't say, oh, don't worry about it, just come in illegally. There's a process. All right. How do we choose who should come to the legal immigration? Well, we know from economics that everything in life involves a cost-benefit trade-off, right? So, for example, when it comes to information search, economists will say you keep searching for additional information as long as the marginal benefit of acquiring more information is greater than the marginal costs of acquiring such information, right? So this utility framework of navigating through costs and benefits can be applied to a million contexts. My doctoral dissertation was in psychology of decision making and information search. So when you're deciding whether individuals should be allowed to come into the country, it has to be that that the cost-benefit analysis is such that that each individual who's allowed in has a lot more benefits than costs. But when you let in people who don't speak the language, don't have any education, don't have any skills that you are desperately in need of, they're not just bringing in neurosurgeons and teachers and nurses. Millions of people are being let in who are only going to be social welfare recipients. Now, you don't have to send me an email saying, but my uncle Hector Rodriguez is a real nice guy and he's been working hard for 20 years and paying taxes. Of course, there are decent, hardworking people who are here illegally. But how many parasites in a society should it be okay to tolerate? Should you have to go work in order to feed those folks? Why is it that illegal immigrants get greater funding from U.S. taxpayers than American vets do, than American citizens do subsequent to a natural disaster? That's suicidal empathy. That's what I talk about in the book. Okay, so a country has to optimize its benefits when it's making a decision. If you don't add more than you take away from a society, then don't let don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. It's as simple as that. We came from Lebanon. We lost everything in Lebanon. We escaped with skin of our teeth just to survive execution. We came here. My parents never took a cent from the government because we have what's in Arabic is called sharaf. Sharaf means dignity. My parents would have rather died than to be little welfare recipient beggars. And they went working in places where I remember my mother would be crying at her job because she felt that given the status she had reached in Lebanon, she was now a 9-to-5, clerk at some place. She would be crying, but she wasn't going to be a parasite to the social system because we have sharaf, dignity, for those of you who speak Arabic. Now, some degenerates will say the following things to me, and I discuss all this in in Suicidal Empathy, which I'm about 35,000 words in right now. It's very disorganized. I still have to clean it, but I'm hoping to have it ready well before the actual, contractually mandated time. But let's see. People say, well, you're such a hypocrite, Gad. You're an immigrant. Your buddy Elon Musk is an immigrant. So you're going after immigrants and you're an immigrant? Right. I mean, my dad is a man. Ted Bundy is a man. So why am I so upset about stopping Ted Bundy from killing people? Because he's a man and my dad is a man. They're both men. So aren't I being hypocritical in going after Ted Bundy, who's a man, just like my brother and my father and my son are men? I mean, the level of stupidity is simply unfathomable. Immigrants are not all created equal. Elon Musk is contributing maybe a bit more than the guy who just tried to rape and kill and ended up killing Laken Riley. But they're both, quote, immigrants. I mean, it's right? A tiger, a Bengal tiger, and your little kitty Fido are both feline. So they're both feline. So why are you afraid from the Bengal tiger when you every day cuddle up with Fido? They're both felines. So you should just go up to the forest and try to caress the Bengal tiger. He's not going to do anything to you. They're both felines. It's unbelievable. All right, so that's immigration. 0 illegal immigrations. 0, not one, right? There isn't a bit of bank robbery that's okay. Well, it's okay rape as long as, you don't do it too harshly, right? No, rape is a crime. Bank robbery is a crime. Violating sovereign borders is a crime. Nothing else to add. It's done. Get your ass out of the country. Okay? That's it. Simple as that. All right. Regarding legal immigration, all immigrants are not created equal. They don't contribute equally to society. Any sane and rational society understands that and says, we only want people who will advance, contribute to our society. If not, you're not welcome here. If you're going to sow division, if you're going to bring in your Middle Eastern hatreds, if you're going to chant death to Jews all day long on campus, then you're really not welcome here. It doesn't take a fancy professor to tell you that. Listen to your instincts. Okay. Now let me talk about some other things, non-immigration things that are pissing me off. Let's begin with occasional cortex AOC. Did you see a few days ago in the deep darkness of the night when nobody's looking what occasional cortex did? She removed the pronouns from her bio. That should come with consequences because the level of performative degeneracy is so outlandish that it really is an affront to human dignity. Because look, until 15 minutes ago, the 117 billion people that had existed on Earth were able to navigate through the conundrum of recognizing male and female without any problems. And then some parasitic degenerates said, no, 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 no. You could be 6'4" with a 9-inch penis and a full beard, and you fathered 3 children, but today you call yourself Linda and you wear sexy lingerie, and you're Linda. Only degenerates think that your chromosomes, your hormones, your anatomy, your genitalia, the fact that you fathered using, spermatozoa in your testicles, all that can completely go away when you wake up the next day and call yourself Linda. You become a woman, and and I'm a she. So you can't tell using secondary sexual traits whether I'm male or female. Oh, okay. So then, of course, occasional cortex decided that, just like all my academic colleagues who are degenerates, that we all are going to put in our emails he, her, and he, whatever. Okay, I certainly didn't do that. But now when she sees that it's no longer fortuitous, it's no longer politically expedient, when she sees that the zeitgeist is changing because Orange Man is coming into power, suddenly she says, I sense that the wind is changing, and therefore I'm removing my pronoun. If you thought it was the right thing a month ago, then there's no reason why it's not the right thing today, right? Like I've never deleted a tweet. I've never changed, right? And if I changed my position on something, it's because it was through a reasoned process, which I can now defend. So I don't need to go in the middle of the night, as your boy Mark Cuban did, where he started deleting all of his orgiastic Kamala Harris tweets. Suddenly he's deleted all of them. Why? Why did you delete them? If she's the greatest thing since sliced bread, that holds true whether she won or not. Stand by your principles, man. But you don't have principles. It's performative bullshit. Okay, so number one, occasional cortex AOC is a degenerate. All right, let's go to British John Oliver. It's a very important issue. It's a very important issue. You see, when I speak with a British accent, I suddenly gain IQ points. So because John Oliver speaks with a British accent, he must be saying something smart. Or he's a castrated degenerate. Did you see him now when he went on a rant on his show saying how ridiculous it is? It's a garage. No, asshole, it's a garage. It's an important issue. Not it's an important issue. No. No. We don't do issue here. Okay? Your little British accent doesn't impress me, degenerate asshole. All right. So what did he do? He goes on. He doesn't yet see that the winds are changing. He's doubling down. So he goes, what is it that you care so much? You're weird that you care so much because some poor trans girl wants to, play sports. And by the way, there's absolutely no evidence that, biological males, men, boys, testicles, penises, testosterone, different muscular structure. There is no evidence that they perform better than women. Really? There's no evidence? How about we bet $1 million each? See, I'll present the evidence that suggests that there is hormonal, physiological, anatomical, morphological, behavioral differences between men and women because we're a sexually dimorphic species consisting of 2 phenotypes called male and female. So I'll propose that, and you'll propose your counter evidence, and then we'll see who wins. And then whoever wins gets the $1 million. I don't think John Oliver is going to take me up on that offer, right? Because a 3-day-old pigeon knows that there are differences. But he gets up, just like all my academic colleagues, just like these liberal senators who mocked and scoffed at me when I appeared in front of the Canadian Senate in 2017. And I said, what kind of insanity is this that you have to bring a professor to tell you that there is male and female and that there are differences between the two sexes and so on? And they were upset at me and I was promoting genocide of trans people and so on and so forth. You can go and watch it. It's available. You can watch it and you won't believe that it's possible that that reality was taking place. But John Oliver still thinks that he's in the majority, and therefore he goes on and says, this is ridiculous. And then I went and I replied to him. I said, well, the United Nations, hardly a conservative bastion, the United Nations produced a report that said, and by the way, this is an underestimate, that there were at least 900 cases of women, real women, with vaginas, that had lost medals to, trans women, also known as men. So 900. So does John Oliver think that, well, 900 is not really a big number. I mean, 900 is okay. Just like, should we really be worried, as Martha Raddatz explained to us, if in Aurora, Colorado, it's just a couple of buildings that the Venezuelan gangs have taken over and are extorting people and raping them and beating them and asking for protection money. It's just a couple of buildings, so don't make a big deal out of it, J.D. Vance. Right? Think about it. Jeffrey Dahmer just killed a few people. Most other days he was totally fine. If you look at, say, John Gacy and calculate, let's say he killed 30 young boys. Well, if he lived 50 years, 365 days times 50 years, that's a lot of days where he didn't kill anybody. So are we really going to put John Gacy to death when 99% of the days he was an absolutely lovely guy? He even wore a clown suit at children's parties. He's a good guy. Let's not let 30 murders taint his otherwise beautiful life. Imagine that I'm sitting here, I'm a 60-year-old man at 9/11 at night, and I have to have this discourse. What's happened to our society? But that's where we're at. Hence the parasitic mind. Hence suicidal empathy. So John Oliver says, it's ridiculous, all of these right-wing bigots. Okay, fine. Let's go on to Morning Joe Scarborough. What a degenerate. What a castrated degenerate. And then his wife, Mika, who definitely is the one who has the the penis in the pants. She's the one who runs that couple. I think they're married. Did you see them grovel to Orange Himmler? The day before, he's worse than Hitler. Literally, for years, he's worse than Hitler. He's going to bring the end of democracy. He's going to institute martial law. The United States will cease to exist, and so on and so forth. The day that he wins, the day after, they're trying to reach him. So, how could that be, right? Of course, they said, well, it's because we have to maintain lines of communication. Now, what I love about Donald Trump, he's turned out to be actually pretty magnanimous, to be honest with you. Now, part of being magnanimous is that he's like, come on, kiss my ring. So he is reveling in his victory, but he's doing it in a pretty understated way. By the way, I should say that if you notice, I mentioned this to a few people, including to my wife, and they all said, I think your explanation is right. If you see him now, he's not as bombastic. It seems as if the weight of the world is off his shoulders, and he's no longer exhibiting the types of behaviors that was a turnoff to a lot of people. And I think I know why. Because he felt, rightly so, greatly mistreated, right? Everything was thrown at him. The legal system, the civil system, the impeachments, the assassination attempts. No human being, I think, has gone through the ringer the way this guy has. And then he wins. So now he can be magnanimous. Now he can be courteous. Because before, he was in honey badger mode. And part of being in honey badger mode when everybody's coming at you is to have a chip on your shoulder. Now, he was so authentic that rather than always modulate his behavior, he was pissed off. You came after him on Twitter at 2 o'clock in the morning, he was going to hit you back. But now that he has ascended in a way that few human beings, let alone politicians, ever have, because few have ever gone through the types of ordeals that he has been put through, he can now demonstrate all the magnanimity and generosity of spirit that is imaginable. And he knows that ultimately they're all coming to suck up to him, and he's reveling in it. And you know what? More power to him. So, Morning Joe, you remember earlier I mentioned the word sharaf? Morning Joe is exactly the picture in the dictionary of what not having any sharaf is. He will do anything, say anything, throw anybody under the bus, grovel in any way, plead in any way, suck up in any way in order to be able to retain access to power. True degenerates. No honor, no dignity. Finally, I wanted to briefly mention all of the assholes who are, I'm leaving the US. Well, I just found out, my God, what a terrible loss to the United States. Ellen DeGeneres is leaving or has left. My goodness, I'm not sure that we can learn to love again. I think that Robert De Niro's left. Now, I hope that they leave and they don't return, because at least I would respect that, right? I mean, if Donald Trump wins, I'm out of here. And then you see guys like Rob Reiner, he's still here. Stephen King, he's still here. Barbara Streisand, she's still here. And all the rest of those degenerates. So those guys are really pissing me off. I wish that I can be granted immediate citizenship to the United States. By the way, I'm still waiting for that call. People said that I would get this position and that position. We'll see. I guess we've got 4 long years, so we'll see if I'm able to contribute to the reawakening of the great United States. So let's summarize. Illegal immigration is a non-starter. Ship off everybody, deport everybody. Maybe you can give... Look, if people have been here for 20 years and they came here illegally, they still have to be deported, but maybe there is a mechanism by which, you grant people some easier road to re-enter the system as a function of how long you've been here. I mean, frankly, I don't really like that, because I think that it is a deontological principle. If you violated the law, then you violated the law. If anything, we could have thrown your ass in jail. So if all we do is ship you out, then that's it. You rolled the dice, and then somebody came calling. So now watch how the Democrats go around. No, we're a sanctuary city. We're not going to allow that, because it's going to create fear in our undocumented community. What do you mean? What about the fear of the legal residents who don't want to feel fearful because of the increased criminality? And you don't have to have every single undocumented migrant be a criminal for the likelihood of criminality to go up, right? Laken Riley would not be dead if that illegal migrant had not been allowed entry into the country. By the way, he had been arrested earlier for endangering a child's life. And I don't know what, shoplift, like a whole bunch of stuff, in addition to having entered illegally. So he had already had several contact points with the legal system, and yet you just keep releasing him until finally he kills a beautiful young woman. So it's a non-starter, illegal immigration, absolutely, no questions asked. And then for legal immigration, it has to be that the people that you let in grant you a greater benefit than the costs to the host society. And there has to be, I didn't mention this word, it's a term that I introduced a while ago, cultural homophily. Homophily is love for similar others. Well, cultures have values, right? So Estonian and Lithuanian cultures are more similar to each other than Estonian and Japanese culture, or Estonian and Yemeni culture, right? So you can calculate the score on cultural homophily between two cultures, and then you try to maximize that homophily score. So in the same way, for example, that birds of a feather flock together when it comes to mating, this is called assortative mating. We tend to prefer to mate with people who share our values. So if it applies at the individual level, it doesn't take fancy evolutionary psychologists to tell you it applies at the cultural level. It's easier for people from Scandinavian countries to emigrate to each other's countries. So Swedes moving to Denmark and vice versa is going to be a lesser stressor of assimilation than if you have Pakistani people from Waziristan moving to Stockholm. It doesn't take a fancy professor to tell you that. Now, when the people coming in actually have values that are perfectly antithetical to yours, then maybe you shouldn't allow them in the millions. There you have it, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this latest things that are pissing me off. It's been slightly more than 2 weeks since Donald Trump won. You can't imagine how much, not just the United States, the world has dodged the bullet. I don't think, by the way, that this solves the problem. I keep repeating, yes, it's wonderful that Donald Trump won. Yes, he's brought in a bunch of disruptors who are going to shake things up and who are going to certainly drain as much of the degenerate swamp as possible. But the game is not over, because it took 50 to 100 years for these parasitic ideas to first be spawned on university campuses and then proliferate. Now, I hope that it won't take 50 to 100 years to eradicate them, but it's not going to be over in the next 4 years. So keep fighting, keep speaking, keep supporting those who fight. So this is going to be now my spiel about how you can support. Please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. That's free. You can subscribe to my podcast. That's free. You can buy copies of my book and support my work. You can gift copies of my book. I'm not going to get rich on the $3 that I make from a book sale, but that's how ideas spread. That's how you support those who are on the front lines trying to do the right thing. You can subscribe to my exclusive X contents. I think $5-6 a month. It's nothing. By the way, after all the fees are taken, about 50% remains with me. So there are many, many ways by which you can hopefully support my work. At the very least, thank you for being here today. Spread the work if you can. Share it with others. Have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Cheers.